I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia,
sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners
we'll be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream that one day even the state of
Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice,
Sweltering with the heat of oppression will be transformed
formed into oasis of freedom and justice.
Yo tengo un sueño que un día mis 4 hijos serán.
Vivre dans un pays où ils ne seront pas juste à la couleur de l'époque.
Pour couleur, pour caractère,
Un sogno. O sogno che un giorno in Alabama.
with its vicious races, with its governor having its lips, dripping with the words of interposition and nullification.
One day here in Alabama, little black boys and little black
girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and
white girls as sisters and brothers.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream.
I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day
every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain
shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain,
and the crooked places will be made straight, and the
glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see
it. Together, this is our hope. This is the faith that I
go back to the south with. With this faith, we will be
able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of
hope. With this faith, we'll be able to transform the
jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony
of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work
together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to
jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing
that we will be free one day
when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring.
From every city and every hamlet, from every state and
every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all
of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and
Gentiles, Protestants, and Catholics will be able to join
hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual.
Free at last, great God Almighty, we are free at last.
Free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Gagne, Executive Director of the Community Coalition on Race, and I welcome you to our 20th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Observance and Luminary Lighting. Last year, we were together in the same space. Over 800 people gathered to honor Dr. King and celebrate our mission of striving to be a community that is racially, culturally, and socially integrated and truly inclusive, where there is equity and equality for all. That mission is always in a state of challenge, but 2020 presented ever more difficult obstacles during the ongoing pandemic and persistent affronts to racial justice. Our trustees and volunteers, however, persisted in their commitment to racial justice and kept the work going through programs like Conversations on Race, Talking to Children About Race, Journey to Anti-Racism trainings, unconscious bias workshops, access to food and housing resources during the pandemic, and more. Many thanks to them. I also want to thank the MLK Planning Committee, which has gone to great lengths to create this virtual observance today. Special thanks to Andrea McChristian, the Law and Policy Director at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, for her keynote address. Much of what you will see and hear today has been recorded in advance and reflects thoughts and feelings at a time prior to the most recent white supremacist assault on the nation's capital and its democratic practices. Nonetheless, some of the material and reflections in today's presentation will challenge us. The murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery have inspired a new generation of activists, people who are expanding and deepening the dialogue around racial justice and striving for lasting change, just as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. strove to create a movement in civil rights and racial integration. We ask you to sit with us while we recognize and commemorate the journey towards justice thus far, as well as acknowledge and honor the deep and true pain of people of color's current lived experience. At this challenging moment, we remain committed to our mission of racial integration, racial equity, and true inclusion. And our great hope is that today you will be inspired to learn more and to take action. Please visit our website, communitycoalitiononrace.org, to learn more about what we do. And now I invite you to join the members of Christ Summit, New Jersey, in singing Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the roaring sea. Full of the faith that God has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun on the day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till the sun washed, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, God who has brought us thus far on the way, God who has by might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Let our feet straight from the places our God where we met thee. Let our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadows beneath our fading forever stand. True to our God, true to our native land.
Hi, I'm Barbara Velasquez. I co-chair community engagement for the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race. Welcome, and thank you for coming to this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Day of Observance. For the last few years, Mark and I have stood on stage at Columbia High School predicting how unique and wonderful that year's program would be. But we could not possibly have seen 2020 coming. So now I'm sitting at home telling you that this is by far the most unique Dr. King celebration ever. It'll be one for the books, or should I say one for the videos. Now I'll turn it over to Mark Mucci, Chair of the Martin Luther King Day of Observance Organizing Committee.
Thank you, Barbara, and I do wish we could be together today. You know, our theme of community in times of challenge and controversy has three important words. Challenge. You all faced an unprecedented health and economic crisis this year. Controversy. You all provided your voices to aid the cause of justice. But the most important word is community. You did not face the challenge and the controversy alone, but you came together in our common bond of humanity. And now our presentation will continue with an invocation presented by Minister Patricia Bridges, Cantor Rebecca Moses, and Reverend Elizabeth Testa.
Would you please join your hearts with us in a word of prayer? O Creator, as we gather virtually for this 20th annual MLK observance, after a long year of challenge and controversy, we thank you for the gift of community, for the beautifully diverse people who make up our two towns, Maplewood and South Orange, and all the neighboring communities. Creador nuestro, después de un año lleno de dificultades, te agradecemos el gran regalo de nuestra comunidad.
We come together to celebrate the life of one who trusted you in all things and withstood the painstaking and long-suffering challenges to reshape a consciousness through divine humility, compassion, peace, and love. A life of faith and great courage, the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Help us to embrace his principles of nonviolence and hope-filled vision for the beloved community, a community that courageously resists evil, actively working to overcome poverty, racism, and violence of all kinds, seeks authentic friendships and understanding, joins together to defeat systemic injustices.
Understand suffering as part of the human journey, focusing on its redemptive, educational, and transformational aspects. Chooses love instead of hate, embracing nonviolent love as spontaneous, unmotivated, unselfish, and creative. Holds fast in faith that you are a God of justice, and that the arc of the moral universe, however long, bends towards it.
Holy One, be with us in this time together. Open our minds and hearts to understand even more deeply that we are called to be light-filled beacons of kindness, compassion, justice, and peace. Stir in us an abiding sense that we are all in this together, building a place where all are welcome, all are safe, all belong. En el nombre de amor oramos. In the name of love we pray, and we all say together, Amen.
Amen.
We are all in this together. We are all in this as one. If you're lost and alone, come into this home you belong. We belong. I'm gonna try to make this place a home for you, the kind of place where we have open arms, curious and kind. No one's left behind in this place. In this place, I'll do my share to make this place safe for you, the kind of safe where each of us can grow, blooming and bright. Step into the light of this place, of this place.
Hello, and welcome to the Community Coalition on Race 2021 Virtual Martin Luther King Service. This is Maplewood Mayor Frank McGehee.
And South Orange Village President Sheena Collum, and we are happy to join you today celebrating the life, legacy, and service of Dr. King. Over the last year, our community has faced challenges and controversy, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the national awareness and reckoning of racial injustice in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, and more. We have experienced so much.
But the experiences have not all been negative. We have seen the power of service and sacrifice in our community like never before. Residents coming together to help each other in the greatest time of need. So many people from all walks of life have done their part to help others at this time.
The Frontline Appreciation Group of South Orange and Maplewood has delivered over 1,300 meals to area hospitals and local first responders while supporting our local restaurants. The SOMA New Jersey 3D Printer Alliance and the SOMA Sewing Volunteers provided tens of thousands of face shields and masks to healthcare workers and essential employees.
Our local food pantries and volunteers have been working overtime addressing food insecurity. And our towns have also come together to raise tens of thousands of dollars to support our senior citizens and families in financial need.
The acts of service, volunteerism, and contributions made by our community to help each other cannot go unnoticed, including the sacrifices we individually made to protect ourselves and each other, wearing our face masks, social distancing, hand hygiene, and as difficult as it's been, staying away from one another.
And in the midst of a global pandemic, we were collectively brought to tears and inspired to action as we watched the tragic murder of yet another Black life at the hands of law enforcement. We commenced with confronting and acknowledging the historical injustice people of color have experienced in our country and even in our local communities and schools. And we demanded better.
In no small part due to the amazing work of the Community Coalition on Race, our residents were given outlets through digital mediums to feel connected to one another, to discuss systemic and institutional racism, and lift voices and experiences of our marginalized neighbors. It was and continues to be a racial reckoning that transcends law enforcement and calls us to act upon injustice and discrimination in housing, job opportunities, access to education, and even healthcare, as we've seen communities of color disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 virus.
And the work continues, as there is no time for fatigue, but rather endurance to keep us accountable and present in this moment, and not to let that fade away. We are called to serve every day, and today should be a reminder of that responsibility. Dr. King is the quintessential definition of service, but his service also means to fight for those who cannot, to fight for those who do not, to fight for what's right and just.
So if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl.
Because whatever you do and whatever we do as a community, we must keep moving onward and upward.
Thank you to our communities of South Orange and Maplewood.
And thank you to the Community Coalition on Race.
Each year, on the evening of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, residents and business owners in our two towns light luminaries, white bags with candles inside, as a sign of our commitment to his vision of the beloved community. Back in January of 2020, nearly 1,400 homes and businesses in our two towns were shining with luminaries. On March 13, only 6 weeks later, shelter-in-place orders were issued due to the pandemic.
Our community was spurred into action to help one another during this time of great challenge. On May 17th, to mark the 2-month anniversary of quarantine, we celebrated our community being luminaries in action. As we now watch the video created for that occasion, we can be grateful that we have continued to be the light for each other and others as we have journeyed through this challenging and unprecedented year.
Let there be light. Let there be light. Let there be light.
An ancient rabbi once asked his students, "How can you tell when the night has ended and day has begun?" An eager student spoke up first. He said, "Could it be that the day has begun when you can see an animal in the distance and tell if it is a sheep or a dog?" "No, that's not it," answered the rabbi. Another student wondered, "Is it when you can look at a distant tree and tell if it is a fig tree or a peach tree?" "No, I'm afraid it's not that either," answered the rabbi. After several other students tried to answer the rabbi's question, all without success, the rabbi took a deep breath and said, "My cherished students, the night has ended and day has begun when you can look upon the face of any person and see that it is your brother, your sister. Because if you cannot see this, there is darkness. It is still night." Dr. King knew the perils of darkness, and we know that the darkness of his time still exists today. But Dr. King also offered us the solution when he said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that."
He's the choir director at South Orange Middle School. But on top of that, he's also become a leader of the SOMA 3D Printer Alliance, which is bringing together his students and their families, and even some complete strangers from across the state in an effort to create face shields for our frontline workers. And so far, Jake and his team have produced and delivered, are you ready for this? 18,630 and counting.
The power of a single flame is immeasurable because its light can kindle another and another and another. We sit in this room surrounded by light and darkness, the illuminating flame of our youth, of our families, of our neighbors. And yet we know that there are so many other candles yet to be lit, so many souls who remain in the dark night. And so I invite you to respond to each of the next lines with the words, "Let us be the light." Only the light of compassion can drive out the darkness.
Let us be the light.
Only the light of trust can drive out the darkness.
Let us be the light.
Only the light of friendship can drive out the darkness.
Let us be the light.
And only the light of beloved community can drive out the darkness. And we all say, "Let us be the light." Out of the night, a new day will come, illuminating the dark corners of our world. Let there be light. Let there be light. Let us be the light.
Good afternoon. I'm Audrey Rowe, Program Director for the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race. Under normal circumstances, we all would have passed through these doors behind me and be seated in the Columbia High School auditorium to enjoy today's program. And at this moment, I would be reminding you that our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit that depends on people like you to continue our work of providing anti-racism education, hosting candid conversations on race, and advocating for policy changes in our schools, in our police departments, in our town governments that move us closer to Dr. King's vision of the beloved community. Last year, thanks to your contributions and generosity, this free will offering raised over $2,000, and it is our goal to meet or surpass that amount today. So please click the donate button now to make your tax-deductible contribution. If things go as planned, you can watch our progress in the chat, and feel free at any time to jump in to add additional donations. Thank you so much.
What you see here on the screen are members of our Martin Luther King Jr. event planning committee. In this time of challenge and controversy, we met virtually, just like this, in order to prepare this presentation. We're here now to talk about a longtime mainstay of our planning committee, Lee Boswell May.
Our friend Lee passed away last spring as the tragedy of this pandemic was just beginning to be evident. Lee was a true daughter of South Orange, raised here and remaining in a community which her family had helped to shape. Lee brought truth and beauty to her hometown, justice and jazz.
Lee's family had been in South Orange since the 1920s. She was so full of stories about the history of the town. Her eyes would light up when she talked about her family's limousine business, her experiences at Columbia High School, and how her family's civil rights work made South Orange a better place. Her family was part of the Great Migration, coming from Virginia to Jersey City, and finally to South Orange. This time last year, I was sitting next to Lee in the front row of Columbia's auditorium. And I believe she is sitting here right now. She wouldn't miss this for the world.
Lee was a champion of the arts in South Orange and Maplewood, especially with respect to the jazz and blues music that she loved. Thanks to the giants of jazz, on which she worked tirelessly, musicians all over the world know of South Orange as a place where once-in-a-lifetime jazz summits have taken place, with artists young and old coming together for many memorable evenings. Lee was the curator for SOPAC's Jazz in the Loft series and supported other jazz presentations throughout the two towns.
Lee, what a shining example of what it means to serve and love our community. As a longtime member of the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race's Board of Trustees, Lee was always the first to arrive at board or committee meetings, the first to raise her hand for whatever task was needed, large or small. And she could always be counted on to share a personal and often unknown piece of local history that put an issue being discussed in the right perspective. We so appreciated you, Lee, and we will never forget you.
On behalf of our village president and my fellow trustees, the Township of South Orange Village will be naming a road in honor of Lee Boswell May. The road, Bos Way, will be located in Cameron Park and will be dedicated in early 2021. As Bos, as so many of us have fondly called her, called South Orange her home, and has always provided a connection to the rich history in the town and the community, we felt that the access road that connects between Meade Street and South Orange Avenue will ensure that her name and legacy continue. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity and is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth. In my role as a trustee for South Orange and former board of governor for South Orange Performing Arts Center, I was able to witness the dedication that Bos had to our town. I am proud to bestow this dedication to her, as this road will be the first one in South Orange that has been named in honor of an African-American woman. To Bos's family and friends, we hope that we will see some normalcy in the future to have the true celebration that Lee Boswell May deserves. Thank you.
It is said that one of the last things that Martin Luther King Jr. said that fatal day in 1968, as he was preparing to go and address a gathering, was to saxophonist Ben Branch, Ben, be sure you play my favorite song tonight, Precious Lord. Play it real pretty. Lee's friend Greg Buford, with students from his School of Music, will help us honor our great and good friend by performing Precious Lord.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired. I am weak. I am worn through the storm, through the night. Lead me on to the light. Take my hand. Precious Lord, lead me on.
Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Daniel Prude, George Floyd, Casey Goodson Jr. Tragically, the list continues. Just as South Orange and Maplewood rallied to combat the challenges of COVID-19 in our community, together we took to the streets to protest the repeated incidents of extrajudicial killings and racial injustice that erupted across our country in 2020. Our response? MAPSO Marching for Justice.
While the students of MAPSO were experiencing the isolation of the pandemic and increased social unrest in our nation, the Community Coalition on Race offered a platform for us to use our voice to impact social justice and advance racial inequity. Together, we created the Coalition Youth Collective. What is so unique about this collaboration is our desire to focus on the arts as a means of expression. We are so fortunate to live in a community where we can work together to maximize our voice. The next video, Dear MAPSO, highlights some of our work alongside many engaged adults who make MAPSO the community that strives to make a difference. Thank you to all of the organizations and activists who allowed us to use their compelling footage. Thank you.
Dear MAPSO, I need you to understand that painting letters on a road is not enough. Because MAPSO, my life doesn't truly matter to you until it's time to be labeled as diverse so people can move to this town. Until it's time to profit off of me so you can make more money. You turn a blind eye to the achievement gap. You turn a blind eye to Black students disproportionately getting suspended and expelled. Even up until this moment, you turned a blind eye to racism. You ignored our stories, found it easier to silence us instead of opening your ears because you didn't want to ruin your image of being stigma-free. Dear MAPSO, I am your image. Black people, people of color are what make MAPSO MAPSO. So if you would like to keep profiting off of us, I would suggest you listen up. My culture, my skin, my existence isn't something you can hold captive. You don't deserve me. I need you to understand that my being is explosive. Explode, to burst or shatter violently. See, my heart was sculpted from porcelain with minuscule cracks that slowly slide down its body, and my bones be the color of Snow White without white privilege, but they are strong. I'm convinced they were sewn together by my ancestors' very hands. I wouldn't be surprised. They built a lot of things for free. And let's not forget about my skin, this sun-absorbing masterpiece. The devil is afraid to grace my presence because I am fire. When my body goes up in flames, my spirit will prance throughout galaxies and find its inhabitants with the stars. And my ashes will bury themselves in the veins of my post-existent vanity. You will never deserve me. So you don't get to paint over the years of pain people of color have endured in this town. You don't get to paint over the self-doubt and imposter syndrome your teachers impose onto Black children. You don't get to paint over July 5th. You thought I forgot about that one? How July 4th celebration turned into Maplewood police forcefully pushing Black teenagers into Irvington because that's where they assumed they lived.
In May of 2020, incensed by the murder of George Floyd and in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, members of Soma Justice staged a die-in, what we called a die-in, to protest white supremacy, to honor victims of racist violence, to protest the disregard for Black life, and also to demand that our fellow white Americans take action and take accountability for our complicity in the exploitation and devastation of Black Americans. What our plan was, as we came together, was to hold what we called a die-in in an intersection in downtown South Orange, New Jersey, for a period of 8 minutes to reflect the length of time that police officer Derek Chauvin pressed his knee to George Floyd's neck, murdering him.
How Black children were slammed onto the pavement by the same police officers who are supposed to be protecting us. How we were herded out like you've always wanted us to be. We will never forget. So wake up and start seeing what has always been there. We have never been stigma-free. Dear MAPSO, I don't want letters on a road. I want change. Your time is up. I refuse to keep waiting.
Black asexual lives matter, black intersex lives matter, black ally lives matter. Period. If you're not standing...
If not now, when?
July 4th must become a day of somber remembrance and action. We must commit ourselves to making the promises of that declaration a reality, which it's not at the moment. We will transfer all celebratory energy to observing Juneteenth as America's true day of independence.
Lamentably, it is an historical fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily.
We've seen how individuals working together can address the challenge and controversies facing our community. We're going to be joined now by Andrea McChristian, the Law and Policy Director for the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. The Institute works to ensure economic justice, criminal justice reform, and to expand access to our democracy. As Law and Policy Director, Ms. McChristian leads the implementation of the Institute's efforts in those areas. She's a 2008 graduate of Yale University, where she served as co-president of the Yale NAACP. She's a 2013 graduate of Columbia Law School, where she was a Harlan Fiske Stone Scholar. She interned in the law school's Human Rights Internship Program and interned at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. She clerked for Chief Judge Patrice B. Tucker of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Her writings on juvenile justice and racial justice have been published, and she is in the forefront of efforts for economic and social justice reforms in our state. It's my honor and pleasure to present to you Ms. Andrea McChristian.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so delighted to be with you today to share a few brief remarks. Thank you so much to the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race for the invitation to speak with you all today. Again, my name is Andrea McChristian, and I'm the Law and Policy Director of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. My organization is a legal policy and advocacy organization that seeks to empower people of color by building reparative systems that create wealth, transform justice, and harness democratic power from the ground up right here in New Jersey. And when I think about the topic of today's powerful event, community in times of challenge and controversy, my mind immediately turns to two reflections I'd like to share that highlight how our communities can and must come together to tackle the challenges and controversies we face today right here in the Garden State. And specifically, I'd like to focus on how the creation of Dr. King's beloved community can only occur with an understanding of how where we have been influences where we are going. So let me now use these two reflections to frame my remarks this afternoon. $352,000. That's the median wealth of a white family in New Jersey, the highest in America. By comparison, the median net wealth of a Black New Jersey family is only $6,100. And as the Institute outlined in our recent data brief, Black and Brown in New Jersey, these numbers are also jarring at the individual level. With an individual white New Jerseyan having a median net wealth of $106,210 compared to just $179 for Black and Latino New Jersey residents. But to understand how we address this shameful racial wealth gap, we have to understand how we got here. Because as Dr. King noted, we are not makers of history, we are made by history. Accordingly, to understand where we are today, we must understand the history of housing inequity in New Jersey, one of the drivers of the racial wealth gap. Today, 77% of New Jersey's white households own a home. By contrast, less than half, or 41% of Black households do. And as the Institute outlined in our recent report, Erasing New Jersey's Red Lines, to understand how we got here today, We have to go back. We have to go back to when the colony was first founded and each settling family received additional acres of land for every enslaved person they brought into the colony. As a result, by 1830, over 2/3 of all enslaved people in the North were held in New Jersey. We have to go back to how some Black New Jerseyans, once freed from slavery, engaged in an early iteration of sharecropping called cottaging. We have to go back to the use of racially restrictive covenants in the early 20th century that limited Black homeownership opportunities. We have to go back to Black soldiers returning from World War II, who, unlike their white counterparts, were largely shut out from the opportunity to buy affordable homes under the GI Bill. Indeed, less than 100 non-white veterans in New York and northern New Jersey received any of the 67,000 mortgages offered in the region under the GI Bill. We have to go back to how the federal practice of redlining took root deeply throughout New Jersey to deny crucial mortgage loans to Black communities. And we have to go back to understanding that during the Great Recession, banks targeted Black communities with predatory subprime loans, leading to mass foreclosures. In fact, the lasting impact of the recession on home ownership remains. New Jersey has had the highest foreclosure rate in the nation since 2015, and Atlantic City and Trenton, two cities with sizable Black populations, continue to lead the nation with the highest number of foreclosures in the country. So when we talk about New Jersey's stark racial wealth gap, we need to understand that it didn't just appear in recent years, but is a direct result of a history that is deeply entrenched here in New Jersey. Because, as Dr. King said, we are not makers of history, we are made by history. And we need to tie this stark racial wealth gap into the larger narrative of economic justice, an issue that compelled Dr. King to launch the Poor People's Campaign shortly before his assassination. Dr. King knew that to build the beloved community, all should have access to economic security and financial freedom. And to realize this dream, we must all work and join together to advance policies and practices that allow everyone to bask in the sunlight of opportunity. Which brings me to one more example and reflection I'd like to share of how our charge to bend the moral arc of the universe toward justice, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. urged us to do, must be done by an understanding of not only where we are going, but where we have been. Because we are not makers of history, we are made by history. And this time I'm going to tell you a story, the story of the Bordentown School. Founded in 1886 by the formerly enslaved Reverend Walter Rice, the Bordentown School was an elite state-run boarding school that New Jersey operated for Black youth in Bordentown, New Jersey. Called the Tuskegee of the North, after Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, the school educated generations of Black students to become future leaders. Recognized as one of the leading schools nationally for Black students, the Bordentown School was visited by such luminaries as Albert Einstein, W.E.B. Du Bois, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Paul Robeson, just to name a few. But after the end of school segregation and a failed attempt to integrate the school, the Bordentown School closed in 1955. And what now sits on the land that was home to the Tuskegee of the North, one of the most elite centers of Black excellence in the nation? Hayes, New Jersey's only girls' youth prison, and across the street sits JMSF, the state's most secure youth prison for boys. Bordentown has literally become the school-to-prison pipeline realized here in New Jersey. And what has been the result of the shameful history of diverting resources that would uplift our young people into prisons to incarcerate them? Today, New Jersey has the worst Black-to-white youth incarceration disparity rate in the nation, and the fourth worst Latino-to-white youth incarceration disparity rate in the country as well. Currently, New Jersey spends $300,000 to incarcerate each young person in a state youth prison, even though the youth prisons are over half empty, and about a quarter of the young people released from these facilities end up right back there within 3 years. I'm sure you all can imagine, especially in this public health moment where every dollar must be accounted for, how we can better spend the $300,000 per child or the over $50 million currently spent on youth incarceration to improve the lives of our young people. And I wanted to frame my remarks on the theme of community in times of challenge and controversy with these two narratives on the history of housing inequity in New Jersey and the Bordentown School, because I wanted to provide you with some tangible examples of how we must understand where we have been to chart the path forward to where we are going. Because we are not makers of history, we are made by history. At the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, we use not only a historical context to understand the various issues for which we advocate, which include closing the racial wealth gap and youth justice, but also voting rights, policing, and reparations. And we do so through a community-driven theory of change that guides our work. This is our model as a legal policy and advocacy organization, and I hope can also provide some guidance as to how we all can harness the power of community in times of challenge and controversy. For as Dr. King once proclaimed, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Equipped with these powerful words, I hope we all leave today's event inspired, encouraged, and fortified as a community to learn from what has come before us to combat the challenges and controversies that lay ahead. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
If you feel insignificant, you better think again. Better wake up because you're part of something way bigger. You're part of something way bigger. Not just a speck in the universe, not just some words in a Bible verse. You are the living word. You're part of something way bigger. Bigger than you, bigger than we, bigger than the picture they framed us to see. But now we see it. And it ain't no secret, no. Understand the truth about that question in your soul. Look up, don't look down, then watch the answers unfold. Life is your birthright, they hit that in the fine print. Take the pen and rewrite it. Step out your estimate, step in your essence, and know that you're excellent. Rise. Spirit is teaching, no, I'm not just preaching, I'm taking my own advice. Let mama let you know. Mama's still trying, I can't get no days off. I don't get no days off, truly I'm feeling it. I had to say that thing twice. Trying to be a good wife, still really hard, I can't lie. But I promised you I would fight, so I fight. If you're feeling frustrated and you're sinking, I'm jumping in. Forgiveness is key because we're fighting something way bigger. You never lose, we are winners. I'll be the roots, you be the tree that's on the fruit that was given to me. Legacy, we're part of something way bigger. Something way bigger. Bigger than you, bigger than we, bigger than the picture they framed us to see. Legacy, oh, you're part of something way bigger. Let love be the water I pour into you and you pour into me. There ain't no drought here, blooming to our actual powers. I'll be a sanctuary, you just don't know it yet. You just don't know it yet. No matter how hard it gets, you got my blood in you, and you're gonna rise. You're part of something way bigger. You're part of something way bigger. Bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than the picture that painted us to be. Yeah. Ooh, ooh, you're part of something way bigger. So, look up, don't look down, and watch the answers unfold. Life is your birthright, they hit that in the fine print. Take the pen and rewrite it. Step out your estimate, step in your essence, and know that you're excellent. Rise. The spirit is teaching, no, I'm not just preaching, I'm taking my own. If you feel insignificant, you better think again. Better wake up because you're part of something way bigger. You're part of something way bigger. I'll be the roof, you'll be the tree. Pass on the fruit that was given to me. Legacy. We're part of something way bigger.
Hi, I'm Kelly Quirk, and I'm the chair of the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race. I want to thank you for joining us for our Dr. Martin Luther King Day event. Normally, we'd be joining together in spirit, and this year we know that our community doesn't have to be physically together in order to make a difference in each other's lives. I hope for 2021 that our community continues to come together with a special goal of ending the racial divide, ending racism, supporting intentional integration, and being purposeful about integration and equity. I want to thank the people who put this event together, which includes Mark Mucci, Barbara Velasquez, Monique Taylor, Katie Cullen, Marty Remy, and Reverend Liz Testa. We also had wonderful performances by the incomparable CHS Special Dance. And a special shout out to Reverend Moses, Minister Patricia Bridges, and Cantor Rebecca Moses. I want to thank Village President Collum and Mayor McGeehee, as well as the Greg Buford School of Music. We also want to thank our videographer. Without this, we couldn't be together in this special way today, which is Alex Ferrandez. The media music director for today's event, Mark Miller. And I want to remind you all to take part in our special Luminary Project, which is part of our MLK Day celebration, and is a way that we can all come together. And that is organized by Marty Remy and Reverend Liz Testa. And finally, I want to thank our featured speaker, Andrea McChristian. Thank you, everyone, especially you, for joining us today. It takes a lot to take time out these days, but it's so important that we think critically and introspectively about what we can do this next year to commit towards racial justice, equity, and intentional integration. I hope you join us over the course of the year, and I hope you leave motivated from this program and from your community celebration with the luminaries this evening to continue that work forward into 2021 with focus, with vision, and with intention, and with us, the Community Coalition on Race. Thank you so much for joining us.
As we reflect on Dr. King's legacy, the inspiration shared throughout this event, our own continuing commitment to being kind, compassionate, peace and justice seeking members of our beloved community, and prepare for this evening's luminary lighting at sunset, we invite you to respond to each of the next lines with, "Let us be the light."
Only the light of compassion can drive out the darkness. Let us be the light.
Only the light of trust can drive out the darkness. Let us be the light.
Only the light of friendship can drive out the darkness. Let us be the light.
Only the light of beloved community can drive out the darkness. Let us be the light.
Out of the night, a new day will come, illuminating dark corners of our world. Let there be light, let there be light. Let us be the light, to which we all say, Amen.
Amen.
If you're lost and alone, come into this home. You belong. We belong. I'm gonna try to make this place a home for you. The kind of place